So, I guess I should explain myself. So, let's just say something happened with my bed, and it caused me to have to remove some certain parts of it. So, that's why it may look slightly different to anyone who really cares. So, yeah, that's all you gotta know about that. But, back to the actual thing I'm talking about. Seinfeld season 2. Season 1 wasn't for me. I'm gonna be honest. To recap season 1, it wasn't that good. However, hopefully with season 2 can hopefully be better. Is what I'm trying to say. But of course, the real question is if it will end up being good. So of course, let's just again. 1. The ex-girlfriend. Jerry gets roped into hanging out with George's ex. Already, I'm going to be honest, I enjoy this more than a majority of season 1. The plot is still very relatable, very basic, which Seinfeld is, which even coming from someone who only saw season 1 and now just only saw season 2, someone who has a very limited experience of Seinfeld, I know that's something the show is well known for. So I especially with season 1 and now with this episode, I can tell that this is a show where they do try to have events that can totally just happen to your average Joe. Well, there's even some good moments in this episode. George trying to be a nice guy. His whole nice guy speech was funny in the beginning. Elaine calling George homophobic and George not caring is wild. Definitely, it's moments like these that remind you that we are, in fact, this is a 90s episode. People would not be like that nowadays. I don't really have a lot else to say, though. Well, honestly, the episode is a 3 out of 5. I don't even have a lot to say, really. It was consistently fine. It was very much watchable, but nothing I'd really say I'd personally ever want to rewatch in my own time. It's fine, but I don't know. It never reached to the point where it got to the next level. It would be something I'd actually call like straight up good, which is very unfortunate because, especially considering how I wasn't really the biggest fan of most of season 1. So I was hoping, especially with the beginning of season 2, I started to like it more, but at least it was still fine. 2. The pony remark. Jerry accidentally insults an old relative, only to find out she died the next day. Okay, I'm going to be very straightforward with this one. It's a 2 out of 5. This episode has the same problem that I personally believe Seinfeld episodes, a lot of season 1 had, and now this episode unfortunately also has, where it's just so boring. Like, for a comedy, I really didn't laugh that much during this episode. It's a 2 out of 5. It's just a mediocre episode. The best parts of this episode weren't even comedy based. It was the parts of like towards the second half when like Jerry, George, and Elaine were like discussing death and all that. As someone who unironically is very terrified of the concept of death, I at least found that discussion interesting, just on the level that it's something I kind of care about. But other than that, there's not much about this one that really stood out. I don't really care about this relative because we've only seen her for this episode, and she dies like midway through. So obviously, I don't really. There's no investment. The whole thing is pretty much just a misunderstanding plot with Jerry obviously not knowing that this relative had a pony. To be fair, I guess part of the joke is that it's such a random thing too, just someone owning a pony. I guess that is part of it, but I guess it's part of the episode that it is just this random thing. But I didn't find it that funny. Mediocre. Also, kind of weird that Jerry just randomly plays baseball because I thought he was just a stand-up comedian. So why is he and George on a baseball team? Why? 3. The jacket. Jerry gets an expensive jacket, and then he and George meet Elaine's dad. Don't have much to say. 3 out of 5. The part with Jerry and George meeting Elaine's dad was probably the best part of it. It was fine. Very run of the mill. Like meeting a relative who's a bit of a grumpy pants. Other than that, though, not a ton stood out. The whole jacket part didn't really go much beyond Jerry got an expensive jacket, and the jokes with it aren't overly that funny. The problem, see, here's the thing. I only watched these episodes like a few days ago, and the problem I'm having with all of these episodes is that they're so forgettable, and the plots are like almost too loose to the point where you barely remember anything other than like the basic setups. Like, yeah, Jerry gets a jacket, but I barely even remember anything that happens with it, despite the fact I just watched it a few days ago. If it's real, if the episode, which I think is why I think it deserves its 3 rating, because it is just so forgettable. I did kind of like the part with George singing that one Les Miserables song. Sorry if I mispronounced that. But that's only really because I can relate to that type of thing with songs all the time. As a recent example, I recently am really in love with the song "Surfing Bird" by the Trashmen, which technically is is obviously a real song. What I mostly mean is I mostly can't stop rewatching the Family Guy clips that are about it that have this scene. So that was just a relatable moment. But here's the thing, though: being relatable doesn't automatically make it funny. And I wouldn't say that whole George remembering the song stuff was funny. It was just relatable, which again is just It's because I relate to it doesn't make it funny. So yeah, 3 out of 5. Not really an episode I'd ever really want to go back to, but it's also not like horrible to watch. 4. The phone message. George gets anxious over this relationship. Sorry, folks, technical difficulties. Sorry about that. But yeah, phone message. This episode is a 3 out of 5. This is the best example of an episode that where the first half is pretty uninteresting, but then by the second half, it actually starts to pick up. The first half is mostly just kind of I have like nothing really much to say about it. The whole plotline of Jerry dating this girl who didn't really like the commercial was all right. It was a little funny. It was a little funny how much Jerry really got bothered by her liking this random TV commercial, but given that I'm the guy who loves TV shows this much, to the point where he dedicates a whole channel to reviewing seasons of shows, yeah, I can somewhat get where Jerry's coming. I'd probably be like Jerry if it was like a show or something. Hopefully not to the point where I break up with the woman, but yeah. The George stuff, though, starts off kind of okay with George just hating himself over not getting the social cue. But afterward, when it actually turns into the phone message stuff, it gets decently funny. An episode that actually has some serious potential to it, like pretty much almost every episode this season, but unfortunately doesn't really do a good enough job really using its potential. 5. The apartment. Elaine tries to get an apartment above Jerry. Again, 3 out of 5. I'm sorry that I almost am always giving the same rating. I know must not be the most exciting video to watch, but it's the truth. This was another 3 out of 5 episode of Seinfeld. The plot that the episode is named after was not that interesting to me. It was okay. We do get to bring up the fact that Jerry and Elaine were exes again, which is something that we have known since the first season, but it makes sense that they bring it up because, again, it happened to them. It's a part of their history. Honestly, the real reason I recommend watching this episode is the stuff with George and the wedding band. That's easily the funniest. That's the funniest aspect of the episode. And it also has the line of saying George calling himself Costanza, king of the idiots, which I don't know. It's just a memorable quote for me, even if it's not the funniest line ever. So yeah, George's plot was funny, but the main plot, like pretty much a majority of season two, was just kind of okay. 6. The statue. Jerry meets a cleaner named Ray, who Jerry thinks has stole his statue. I like this episode. A 4 out of 5. No, I'm being serious. I genuinely thought this was a good, entertaining episode of Seinfeld. I'm very happy to hear this, considering how mostly negative I've been for pretty much the whole video up until now. My I think the reason I like this one so much is that it feels more focused. Like with the episodes before it, if you could hopefully if you could tell from my reviews, but there were a lot of things happening. With only a bit of it being funny, with the rest of it being just kind of eh. But this is one of the rare. But this, unlike the rest of the season, this one feels more focused. Like they just had one general idea, and they just kind of go with it. When looking through this stuff, no, it didn't look like there was really anything else really going on in the episode. Which again, I don't always mind when something's kind of unfocused. Like I definitely, as an example, I do enjoy me some classic Family Guy, even though that show has cutaway gags which disrupt the entire plot. I'm also a big fan of the show Robot Chicken, despite the fact it's a sketch comedy show and pretty much has no focus and is a very ADHD series. So I definitely don't mind if something doesn't have focus, but you need to still be entertaining with it. And I just haven't found a lot of it entertaining. So this episode was a nice surprise. Also, Ray and Rava, the two one-off characters in this episode, were both funny in their own rights and just made me enjoy watching the episode a lot more. Highlight moment was definitely Kramer towards the end, pretending to be a cop so he can get the statue back. Just a really fun time. Just a really funny scene. Easily the best thing from Kramer so far in the series. In general, this is the best episode of the show so far. I just found this one a solid, enjoyable outing. Even if I do feel bad for George of not being able to give his parents that statue. Well, poor George. 7. The revenge. George gets revenge on his boss. Meanwhile, Jerry has laundry issues. Okay, so I'm just kind of going to skip through most of the Jerry laundry plot, as that side of the episode was just really boring to me. Most of it just did not matter. The best parts of it weren't even really about the laundry stuff. It was just Kramer telling Newman, who I have heard the name before. I think he does become a more important part of the show later on. But for now, he just gets name dropped. Let's just say Kramer saying some really messed up things to Newman when Newman's feeling very depressed. I'm being light about and PG about it because I'm not sure what YouTube will think if I just blurt it out. But it was really funny and probably one of the funniest moments of the whole episode. But other than that, the jury stuff was mostly a bust for me, and not bust in the good way either. Oh no. The George plot was easily the better of the two plots. I did like I did like the scene where he just tried to walk back into work after nothing, like he didn't just get fired earlier. Or not fired, but he yelled how he quit on Friday, but then on Monday tries to stroll back in like nothing happened when he realized that he doesn't really have any other options career-wise. After he gets fired, though, him, with the help of Elaine, end up trying to do something really bad to the boss. That stuff was all right. Not the best, though. Still a 3 out of 5, but not terrible. 8. The heart attack. George thinks he has a heart attack, and from there he turns against doctors. Okay, I'm going to be very straightforward with this one. 3 out of 5. Forgettable. Towards the lower end of a 3. Even for Seinfeld standards, this one was just boring, man. It picks up a bit when George turns purple and this whole car crash felt weird. It almost didn't even feel like Seinfeld, but I didn't entirely mind it given the quality that Seinfeld has been so far up to this point for me. Other than that, though, yeah, not much in this episode was really that funny to me. Elaine dating that doctor wasn't really funny to me. The joke is just that he does doctor stuff, and like the whole like natural medicine argument, the whole social. There's a social commentary they're clearly trying to make here, and for me, it just didn't work that well. Not because I don't agree with it. I honestly, frankly, do not care about most social commentary just in general, so it didn't really do anything for me. I just didn't think the episode was that funny. Jerry trying to kill George was definitely something, though. Well, yeah, 3 out of 5. 9, the deal. Jerry and Elaine try being friends with benefits. Don't have much to say about this one either. It's a 2 out of 5. Just a really awkward and uncomfortable episode. I have a specific moment while watching this one specifically, where I was watching it, seeing my favorite moments, part of where I put each episode, and then realizing, oh man, I put literally nothing down. Then checking the Netflix is where I watched the season and realized I was already 9 minutes in, and nothing good happened. The beginning of it is so slow. Jerry and Elaine just talking and talking and talking, trying to convince themselves to do this. And it's like, yes, just do it already. I want something to happen. I don't consider myself extremely ADHD, but I need something at least entertaining to happen. After that, it just becomes really awkward and uncomfortable with Jerry and Elaine trying to like navigate this new dynamic they found themselves in. And before you know it, everything kind of goes back to normal. Given the remaining 3 episodes, I don't think they ever bring it up again, but they don't entirely dismiss it either. But by the way, the ending implies it's weird, mediocre. 10, the baby shower. Elaine hosts a baby shower in Jerry's apartment. This was a tough one, but I ultimately decided on giving it a 2 out of 5, though it is definitely on the higher end of that rating. Why would I call this a mediocre episode? Well, for everything until like the final couple of minutes, I would probably give this thing a 3. There are some good jokes. Jerry's whole fantasy scene with the FBI was definitely one of the best moments in the whole season for me. That was pretty funny and very out of left field, especially since I didn't even know about the scene until watching the episode. But I don't know. The ending ruins it. George tries to confront the lady he wanted to confront the whole episode, but then he just cowers out, and it becomes just really awkward. And again, not in a funny way. Just an annoying, oh my god, George, just say what you think kind of way. But then they try to contrast it by having this random woman confront what she's thinking and yells at Jerry. I think it's supposed to be a contrast between like how men and women do handle these type of things, and how like women don't cower out but men do. And if you remember from certain episode reviews I've commented on earlier, I don't typically like when things try to comment on like gender and stuff. It usually peeves me off because it was trying to make men seem stupid. Yeah, this is an episode that really isn't entirely bad, but the ending bumped it down to a 2 for me. It made it so I never want to watch this thing again. No, the few good moments I had before honestly aren't worth that terrible ending. Which is something I rarely say about endings, because usually endings don't bother me that much, but this was unfortunately an exception. Maybe if everything before it was funnier, maybe I'd at least have the courtesy to keep it a 3. 11, the Chinese restaurant. Jerry, George, and Elaine wait for a table at that place the episode's named after. I wonder where they went. Okay, so Chinese restaurant. From what I heard well before even beginning season 1, this episode is usually commented on the episode that really started Seinfeld, the moment where it really got born. So this was one of the ones I was the most curious to watch when finally getting around to watching season 2 of Seinfeld, and I liked the episode. It's a 4, and Well, I bet it's an extremely basic, vanilla, bitch boy opinion. I do think it's the best. It's easily the best episode we've had from the show up to this point. But given this is only like the 3-4 rated episode, when combining the first two season reviews, I can't say there's much competition. Again, kind of like the statue from earlier in the season, I feel like it does better than what most of the season than what this show has done up to this point. It takes the more talky dialogue based humor the show has, but instead of just going around doing a bunch of small random plots, again, it's more focused. It's just three characters in a Chinese restaurant together. I will admit, no Kramer is a little strange, but I still liked the episode regardless, so I'm okay with it. Besides, if all of my favorite moments didn't make it obvious enough, I'd probably say George is probably my favorite character now that I've seen more of the show, now that I've seen another full season of it. But Kramer is still definitely an okay character, and I still find it weird that he wasn't chosen to also join in on this particular event. Honestly, almost all of the bits here work well. Maybe the George Uncle stuff was a little unresolved, but them wanting to go eat before watching a bad movie is something I can not relate to. Whenever I go out to the movies with my family, we usually eat after the movie. So and we just eat food at the movie theater. Like, geez, guys, it's not that complicated. The George stuff, again, is easily my favorite part, though. Him just trying to make it up to this one girl that he really messed up with. And then him getting mad to everyone using the phone, to the Chinese manager mispronouncing Costanza, and somehow George is supposed to know that was for him. Honestly, when George yelled, it was such a reasonable crash out. I can't even fully lie. Even Elaine, who usually has just been kind of okay up to this point, had a few funny moments of her own. Like the scene where she tried to pay the guy to give him a table. Honestly, this was just a funny, solid episode. It's a good episode, and I really do hope the show becomes better starting in season 3. And ending things off, I forgot to mention this, but this is only a 12 episode season for those who don't know, so don't worry, we're almost done now. 12, the busboy. George accidentally got a busboy fired. Another one with a tough ranking, but in the end I went for a 4 out of 5. Maybe a little generous, but you know what? I'd actually say this was another good one. Meaning for the first time in Seinfeld history for me, we got back-to-back good episodes, which is good considering we were at the end of the season. So they really put their all for these final two. Well, definitely not as good as the Chinese restaurant one, but still an enjoyable episode. I think I just like George and Kramer together. When George tries to confront the busboy and then Kramer kind of joins him, they haven't really interacted or really done much together before this episode. But I honestly hope we get more George and Kramer specifically later on because they balance each other out really well and they're really funny together. That whole scene with them confronting the busboy in his apartment, it was easily the highlight for me. The Elaine B plot with her trying to get this guy out of her apartment was also really funny though. I really love how just another highlight of this episode was the scene where she tries to rush him out. She was yelling so hard, but it was so funny for me. I do wonder why the guy just didn't just pack the night before though, especially since they were going to leave that day anyway. It was weird, but whatever. It was still funny. Who cares? Good episode. The ending with George unintentionally saving the busboy's life was also a funny way to resolve things, even if the busboy inevitably got fired from his new job again. So yeah, obviously, before I talk about the season as a whole, let me talk about the ranking. At the bottom, with the 2 rated episodes, we got the pony remark, the deal, and the baby shower. Now for the 3s. The heart attack, phone message, jacket, apartment, revenge, and ex-girlfriend. And then for the top 3, the episodes I actually recommend you watch, Busboy, Statue, and of course Chinese Restaurant as my obvious favorite. But Statue and Busboy are still definitely good. Definitely recommend you also check out those episodes. So yeah, 3 out of 12, 3 fours with the remaining 9 ranging from meh, ranging from almost good to mediocre means I unfortunately didn't really like this season either. Very sad because after season 1 was mostly also not that good, I was hoping season 2 would be the moment I start liking the show. It was not. The problem for me is that most episodes, well, at least pretty much the 3 rated ones, most of the 3 rated, do have parts I like and find funny, but have a lot of other parts, plot lines, or moments that are so slow and just still boring. Like, it almost doesn't even feel like I'm watching a comedy at some points. I feel like I'm just watching people talking about their lives, and it's not even interesting stuff either. So I'm just bored and just kind of wanting to watch something else. Hopefully, though, with the final 2 episodes both being good, and most fans generally agreeing the Chinese restaurant episode is when the show starts getting good. I do pray that whenever I get around to start to season 3, which hopefully won't be as long as the wait between 1 and 2, I will start to enjoy the show more. I better enjoy it more because season 3 is like when we get into the full length seasons. So that'll be even more Seinfeldian for me to consume. Oh, bingo, bango.